I love great conversations. Hi, my name is Angel Jones. Thank you for joining me on 12-minute convos where I help you create a brand of your own unique, real self. Listen in as I have conversations with amazing people from all over the world. Good night, Steve Visscher. How are you doing on this wonderful, beautiful night?
Doing wonderful. In fact, it's a beautiful day here in Melbourne, Australia, just right at the moment.
Yeah, it's good to know that you're in my future, Steve. Oh, how is it looking?
Yes. It's looking pretty positive so far, I must say.
Oh, I appreciate that tremendously. Well, your past is looking good. You must have been doing some great things in the past.
Yeah, well, I try my best, and some things work out, and some things, we're a little bit challenged by, but we get through.
Well, do tell us which of your talents is responsible for us connecting at this time.
Well, I guess we connected through LinkedIn, and you sent me a message quite out of the blue, and we sort of connected that way. But it's through podcasting, I think, that most people would at least know my voice and. Hopefully not my face. I have a face for radio, as the saying goes.
So tell us about the radio program you do, my friend.
Yeah, so we concentrate on aviation predominantly here in Australia, and for about the last 8 or 9 years, we've produced a podcast called Plane Crazy Down Under. And really, the whole point of that is to really try and inject some fun and some positivity into the aviation sector here, which is sometimes challenged and can sometimes tend to sort of, fall into a bit of negativity. So, the whole ethos behind that show was to, have conversations and talk about, there's a lot of really positive things that aviation really contributes to the economy and to life in general. So that's really what we've tried to highlight, and it's been a really fun adventure.
Yeah, amazing conversations. Now, I heard you ask one young lady where did her love for aviation occur, and she said, I think it was a C-110 the first time she saw that plane, right?
Yeah.
Where did it occur for you?
It's funny, I had never flown in anything until I was about 17. In fact, growing up as a kid, I probably had a bit of an irrational fear of flying. I didn't really, I'd never done it. I hadn't had a lot of opportunities to do it, but when I did, I'd kind of shirked them. But I remember sitting in this old Air New Zealand Boeing 747 in 1989. I was travelling over to the United States to become an exchange student for 6 months. And I remember thinking, well, it's either this or swim, so let's give it a go. And we sort of taxied out to the runway at Melbourne. And I remember it being a really sort of gloomy, overcast day. And we just sort of, thundered down the runway and, you're thrust back into your seat. And I thought, oh, actually, this is kind of cool. And we sort of, took off up and disappeared into the clouds. And I just fell in love with it straight away. It was just a mind-blowing experience, and I remember thinking, whatever was I afraid of, and why didn't I try this earlier? So that's really where it started, and going across and living in the United States with an Air Force family, a retired Air Force family, and we were lucky we got to visit a lot of Air Force bases, and were really exposed to that culture over there, and that's really what did it for me. And it's one of those things that once it gets into your blood, it never leaves it. Probably a year on from being afraid to fly. Probably a year on from that, I had a student pilot's license, and away we went.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that means it's been a couple of years. Why will you continue to repeat the skill of flying?
Well, like I said, it's been a long time now. I got my that's probably 1990 where I got my first, my private license, and it's just something that it's hard to describe. I just love it, and it's something that I, through circumstance, had to walk away from for many years. But it's something you see a plane fly over, and your eyes are automatically drawn to it, or your ears are drawn to the sound of it. There's just something about it that really does it for me. And I guess combined with a love of talk radio, I decided to sort of combine the two, and along with a friend of mine who was, similarly interested in aviation, we basically combined the two and started a podcast. And it was really actually through that podcast that I got back up and got flying again. So been very, very beneficial.
The power of a podcast. It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh, it's a wonderful medium. It's funny, I remember talking or sending an email to a news director of a very popular, high-rating talk station here in Melbourne many years ago, saying, should I go to a radio school, or I'd love to do this. And I remember him saying, he's never hired anybody from a radio school, and perhaps you should look at going into community radio. So I procrastinated on that for a long time. But in the meantime, this new phenomenon called podcasting sort of sprung up out of nowhere. And so I started listening to podcasts that interest me, mainly technology sort of based podcasts and aviation ones. And I just got this itch, and I thought, I'd love to do this. And so that's what we did. And here we are. So
amazing. Plain crazy, right?
Plain crazy, absolutely. Radio crazy too.
Oh, love it. But tell us one other thing, Steve, that you've done consistently over the last 3 years.
It's interesting. I've just made a decision recently to walk away from a job that was paying, the walking away from the high pressure, high paid job. And that actually came around, I think, from something I've done consistently, which is procrastinate, really, about, should you take this step? And it's taken a lot of time and a lot of working through in my own mind, probably even over the last 2 or 3 years, as to whether that would be the right thing to do. And, would I have the courage to move out of something that's comfortable for me and move into something else? It's interesting when you take that step, but I think if I'd been consistently doing something over the last 3 years, it's probably working through a process of growth, if you like, or of understanding of myself, or even of trying to build some courage to where I could take that step. And it's been interesting to have finally made that decision and moved on into taking a new career path. So,
how does that make you feel now?
It's been interesting. There've been some dark times, I must say. You sort of walk away from it, you think, oh, gee, have I done the right thing? But, I think that it's things in my new job are really sort of to come to a point now where you can see we're starting to get some results and make some changes in the business that I'm working with now. And from that, there's been some other opportunities that have come my way. In fact, there'll be a new podcast that I'm going to start producing as a result of that. So it's starting to feel like it's the right decision. And I've always held to the idea that once you make a decision, it has to be the right one. And so, I remind myself of that every day. You made this choice, so it is the right decision. And, we move on from there. So I'm starting to feel really good about it.
Yeah, I love it. Today I messaged a friend, sometimes you need to jump when you do not see the net. And the net appears, right? So it's well done. I'm glad that you did that. I mean, just doing the calculation of the numbers that you've given me, I'm guessing you're over 50. And I believe there's an amazing book by Bob Buford called Halftime. So highly suggest you probably even look at taking a read on that.
Yeah, I might do. I'm not quite 50 yet, but I probably look at.
Well, I'm doing the 27 plus 17.
Yeah. No, I'm 46. So.
Oh, so where did my maths get tied up there? So you left when you were 17, right? Your first plane ride was when you were 17, and then 27 years later, you said.
Does it work out that way? Could do.
Because 27 and 17 is 54. I'm pretty sure about that. Huh? Am I?
Yeah.
No. It's 44. The good thing is we have that recorded.
Anybody that knows me knows that mathematics is not my strong suit either.
Yeah, I immediately heard your voice drop like, okay, that's how you do that. Well, that's amazing.
But I had my calculator ready if I'd known you were going to ask me that question.
Well, Steve, before I even say let's switch gears, again, amazing audience, we're listening to Steve Visscher. Again, he is the podcast host of Plain Crazy Down Under. Steve, is there any other place you'd like for people to connect with you if they needed to?
Yeah, I'm really finding lately that I'm having a lot of really good engagement on LinkedIn, actually, so you can certainly find me there. People find me around on Facebook and other places like that, but it's a funny thing, isn't it? LinkedIn, when I first started using it, I wasn't sure if it was really of any value to me, but lately I'm finding that it's a really good place to connect with people who are like-minded. I'm looking at doing some other things in podcasting. I'd like to sort of move out of the aviation sphere a little bit, although the new podcast I'll be producing for a magazine, in fact, will obviously be around aviation, but we're looking at producing podcasts, branded podcasts for businesses to help supplement their brand and all that sort of stuff. So there's all sorts of opportunities that I'd like to explore. And I think LinkedIn is probably the best place to connect with people who want to do that sort of stuff.
Wonderful. And again, Visscher is spelled Visscer, Steve Visscher. Well, Steve, let's switch gears for a moment now and let me invite you into my time machine that is surrounded with beautiful, warm, blue Caribbean water. Steve,
wonderful.
What is your earliest childhood memory?
Oh, my earliest childhood memory. I was very, very close to my father, and I can remember back in the 70s, he used to have this orange utility pickup truck, and I have great memories of riding around with him in that, and old Ford Ute, and he'd sort of let you there, change gears and all that sort of stuff. And I have very fond memories of that. I would have been, 6 or 7, I guess, that sort of age range at that time. So great memories.
That's amazing. How do you see that memory connecting to who you are today?
I think it's important to, particularly for fathers, to have really good relationships with their children, particularly their sons. I've tried to certainly emulate that in my relationship with my children. So my father, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but I like to think that he was a big influence on the way that I've, tried to raise my children, and, I'm very proud of them. So hopefully I've done a good job at it.
Can I offer an interpretation to the thought picture you created in my mind?
Sure.
Your father was actually the first guy to help you with the love for transportation.
My dad was a guy that could drive absolutely anything. He was, earth-moving, heavy vehicles. He was just that sort of guy. He loved doing that sort of stuff. He migrated out here in the 1950s from Holland, and basically that was his life. He did a lot of that stuff, and it would have been very influential. I think I love driving things.
Yeah, you love flying things too, right?
Absolutely, yep.
If we fast forward to when you were 12, what was your favorite song?
Oh, let's see, 12. Okay, so mid-'80s. Well, I was always a big Dire Straits fan, so, probably anything that they produced around that time. Right. Hard to really think. That's a long time ago, Angel, I must say.
Yeah, especially if we use my calculation of your age, it's a very long time.
It's even longer back when we use that calculation. Yeah.
Well, Steve, we've arrived at our destination, but before we get off of this time machine, there is a small declaration form. So it's yes or no, possibly a bit more. This actually was inspired by airplanes, all right, this declaration form concept. Steve, all right, so Steve, have you chosen someone to pass on your skills to?
Well, like I say, I would like to think that I could pass on, life skills to my children. I mean, they're 19 and 22 now, so that's really been my whole focus. Is to be the best father that I can be to them, and I think my measure of success for myself would be to have successfully passed on, a sense of sense of worth and a sense of purpose to my children. So that's what I strive to do, even though they're getting older now, and they're probably embarrassed to be around Dad at times, but hopefully not too much.
Are you married, Steve?
I am.
So you have 2 children. Do you believe in God?
No, I'm not really a very religious person. I don't have any qualm with people who are. My mother, for example, derives great comfort from it, and that's just them. But I'm not really a very spiritual person, I'd have to say.
Do you have an inner circle of friends?
I do have an inner circle of friends. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you watch TV for more? Sorry, you could go ahead.
Yeah, so friendships like that's really what life's all about, isn't it? So.
Do you watch TV for more than 3 hours a day?
3 hours a day. I don't think I've really got time in my day to watch 3 hours of television. No, probably not. I'd probably spend an hour or so a night, maybe a little longer, watching television. Depends on what basketball games are on the TV, really.
What about screen time? The phone and the computer, is it more than 8 or less than 8 hours a day?
No, some days it would be 8. I spend a lot of time in front of computers and iPads and things like that, particularly with my work. That's just, the way it has to be, so...
If you, Steve, had to share with us your own unique real statement that represents who Steve Visscher is, what would you say that is?
Well, I'm a nice guy. I suppose philosophically, there used to be a radio host, Casey Kasem was his name, and I remember him always saying at the end of his top 40 shows that it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice. And I think that's something that's we could all sort of live by that. The world would be a better place. So we don't always succeed at those things, and you tend to annoy people at sometimes, perhaps even when you least expect it. But that's the way I try and be with people, is just to be nice to people and hope they'll be nice back to you.
Love it. Steve, this was a great pleasure. Before you leave, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
Well, of course, if you'd like to listen to some amazing interviews about all things Australian aviation, we'd love you to drop by at planecrazydownunder.com, and certainly check out the new work I'll be doing at australianaviation.com.au. We're going to be doing some fun things there in the new year, so podcasting is where it's at. And if anyone ever needs advice on how to do it, from my perspective, more than welcome to get in touch. I love talking about podcasting, and I'm happy to help anyone who, thinks they need some help.
Love it. Steve Visscher, again, great pleasure. Thank you, my friend, for being on What is Inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. Stay tuned for more from our advertisers.
Diabetes is a mountain pandemic. It's a disease that's not acute but chronic. Similar to this rhyming method, I have simplified the definition, the signs and symptoms, and the complications of diabetes for both adults and children in my books, Poems for Patients, A Focus on Diabetes, and The ABCs of Diabetes for Children. These books are available on Amazon.com, and for more information, you can visit my website, poemsbyaj.com. That's poemsbyaj.com.